at 7 so they can turn over to the debate?
Maybe. Welcome. Getting ready for our next Q&A session here. And we are going to see how tonight goes. I know that there are some that are interested in the debate for the Atchison County Sheriff's Department that is happening tonight, and that is going to be also streamed live on Facebook. So because that is happening, if we have anybody who is wanting to see that, we might cut off a little bit early, around 7, to let people do that. If we'll just see how things go. So waiting for anyone potentially to join. And as people do join, I'm sure I'll have to say this again, but as people do join, because this past Sunday was Hub Sunday, we took a break from our usual Roman study. So tonight is really a open forum. You can certainly ask from Romans 2. We'll be finishing up Romans 2 this week, verses 17 through 29. And you can catch a little bit of a preview of that on my Friday preview that comes out on YouTube on Fridays. But if you have any questions, since Hub Sunday, we're not tied into a specific focus on a book, tonight would be a good night to ask those. So we'll go ahead. I know it's right just a shade before when we normally start with this live, but we'll go ahead and start tonight. So any questions that you might have, then fire away. I will share, this will be in the newsletter, and Susan will be sending out a text while I wait for questions. She'll be sending out a text the next couple of days. We are going to ask people to wear masks to the church and while leaving the church. And then once you arrive wherever you were going to sit, then you may take off the mask if you wish. I know some people are still wearing them, and that's absolutely fine. But we have had a few people that are a part of the church that have requested better distancing, and are a little leery of things. And so I think if we can at least approach it at this point with just wearing some masks as we enter the building, as we get to our seats, if we get up from our seats to go to the restroom or whatever, but while we're at our seats, whether we stand and sing or whatever, we can remove the masks for that. But then when we leave the building, we're going to ask people to put masks back on at that point. Again, we'll send out a text with a reminder. We'll put something on the webpage, I'm sure, or Facebook or something. And it'll also be in the newsletter, which you won't get until Sunday, unless you get the electronic version. If you'd like the electronic version of the newsletter, you can even say something in the chat room here, or send an email to the church, and we can just put you on that list, even if that's temporary. So welcome to the Adams tonight. Glad you all could join. And so anyway, open forum for questions tonight because of Hub Sunday on Sunday. So that can be Romans 1, 2, 14, or anywhere from Genesis 1 through Revelation 22. I will stop for a moment. One other thing, and I'll try to remember to say this at the end. I'm just waiting for questions to come in at this point. But one other thing I'll say now is that if or last week I mentioned I didn't know what we were going to do for sure in August, but we are going to continue this format for the month of August with questions. When we get to September, there will be an announcement that you'll actually see in the newsletter. Again, that'll come out this weekend, and you can pick one up Sunday, or it'll be mailed to you on Monday if you're not there to get one Sunday, or you can get it on Friday or Saturday if you want it by email. But we'll be doing something different starting the first week of September, and I'm trying to determine how that's going to fit within the overall scope of things. Again, many of you know me that I like to have things planned out, months and months, if not a year or more in advance. COVID changed all of that for a lot of us, right? So still trying to adapt, still trying to figure out the right approach, and not only for Wednesdays, but also as it relates to Sunday mornings and evenings. And so we'll be doing that shortly. So, it'd be a lot easier for Susan if I just had like dictation software taking this and just putting it in the chat room. But anyway, she's doing a good job of taking what I say and piping it in there too. So anyway,
people are late, they can just read it.
Yep. So again, open for questions. On Sunday, we talked about Romans 14 and the fact specifically, the main text was from Colossians 3, verses 12 through 16. Really, I kind of stopped at 15, but 16 has its own importance. 17 was important too, but I left that one out completely. But Romans 14, there's a verse in there that says, "Do not for the sake of food inhibit the work of God." And in our world today, do not for the sake of wearing masks or not wearing masks inhibit the work of God. What Paul was saying to the group in Rome, again, a church that was made up of Jewish Christians and of Gentiles who became Christians, not Jews themselves, but Jews who had become Christian, Judaizers, typically, as we might think of them. Anyway, they wanted the Gentiles to act a certain way, to eat a certain thing, to worship on a certain way, certain day. And the Gentiles said, wait a minute, we could worship any day, every day. We can eat anything. And anyway, so this conflict occurred. That's largely what Romans is about. That's specifically what Romans 14 is about. And so Paul says, hey, you're going to argue about food, and you're going to limit what God can do through you because of food. Well, today it's not about food necessarily; it's about masks, and so that was my entry into the idea of from Colossians 3 that we are to love one another, putting on compassion, putting on kindness, putting on humility, those various things that were part of the sermon. So. Susan says Romans 14 goes right into Romans 15. And actually, in the first 7 verses of Romans 15, it talks about Jesus. In the first part of Romans 14, it calls one a weaker Christian and one a stronger Christian. Those who are weak, those who are strong. And the strong are the ones that had the understanding that you can that you could worship any day of the week. You could eat anything as long as we're not talking about sinful things here. Okay. That wasn't Paul's point. Paul specifically says, all of you are trying to glorify God, but you have a different understanding. And what we must understand from the stronger Christians' perspective, the weaker Christians had some basis for their thoughts because, well, you can't eat certain foods. Leviticus 11, for instance, says that. But Jesus said in Mark chapter 7, all foods are clean. Well, they didn't have Mark when Paul wrote this. Very likely. They might have. But even if they did, maybe not all of them knew it. Maybe not all of them had read it. Certainly, it wasn't mass produced. It would have been one copy of Mark in Rome. Mark was written to the Romans, so that would be very likely that there was a copy somewhere in the church, but they didn't have Bibles in each home and that kind of stuff. So even if they had a chance to know it, they might not have known it because most of the Gospels had not been written. It's very possible that Mark did write in the 60s when Paul would have written this. It's possible that Mark was the first gospel written, but that's a different story for another day. Anyway, the point being, the stronger Christians were to make allowances to help those who are weaker. And going into Romans 15, Paul says, oh, and by the way, you who are strong, the reason you need to consider those who are weak is that there's a strong one. His name is Jesus, who looked out for those who are weak, which is you. So it really did fit our context today. And again, I spent just a few minutes on this on Sunday morning because when we get to next summer, we might be past this. If you watch tomorrow's video, you might see that I'm not certain we're going to be past this by any stretch of the imagination. But this whole COVID situation that we're in right now, but it also fit within the context of love, which is the put on love from Colossians chapter 3, binding all those other things, the humility, the kindness, the compassion, and those other things that Paul mentioned, forgiveness in the couple of verses prior to that. So again, I'm just talking because nobody's posting, but if you have questions, post, and I can direct my answers more specifically to your thoughts, your questions. And otherwise, I'll probably just keep rambling for a bit. At the beginning of the chat, Susan mentioned the Atchison County Sheriff's race and the debate that is happening tonight. And that is, I don't know that of anybody, actually, I know of one person at our church that might be at that debate. Perhaps there's others, but that person didn't even know if they were going to go for sure. But I know several might want to watch that online. And so, as I said at the outset of this, if there's not a lot of questions that come in the first 25 minutes, we might end about 15 minutes early tonight, right about 7, in order for anybody who wants to watch the debate. It is on Facebook Live. Susan says it's on the Atchison County Mail page. Is that confirmed?
With them, yes.
Yeah. So, but anybody who wants to watch the debate can. Again, if we're in the middle of questions, we'll go to 7:15. But if right now we haven't had any questions yet, so we'll just play that by ear over the next 15 minutes or so. I will also share, and we need to get this in this newsletter, Susan, maybe. We are going to have guests come to our church on August the 31st, or it's 30th, August the 30th, that's Sunday. And it is a couple from India, and the gentleman is a student at the seminary where I teach. I believe is a PhD student. I've actually not met him. I haven't met her either, but they live right next door to our son and daughter. And I'm sorry.
I'll get their names.
And they're here studying for him to get his PhD. But their testimony, Nicole, when Nicole met him, our daughter met him, she was sharing a little bit about their testimony with us. And I said, you know what, I'd love for them to come and share. Obviously, we had the Flemings with us back in late November, I think it was. And our church was a real blessing to that family with a lot of the jewelry that Leah makes. And was able to help their ministry back in Kenya with all of the wives that come to help make those beads and everything that many of you bought, the jewelry, the necklaces and earrings and bracelets and stuff. Anyway, this lady, she makes some sort of pot. What is it, clay pot or something? and she is trying to raise money to buy a refrigerator for her sister back in India. And so I did some pricing of refrigerators. And I don't know what kind of refrigerator, what size of refrigerator, but I just did some pricing of refrigerators in India, and $200. You know, that's what she is working very, very hard to raise, and making as many of these little clay pots as she can.
Plants
Or
too. She's
for,
doing plants.
oh, and
Yeah,
plants and
yeah.
stuff, Susan says. But so what I told Nicole, and I'm supposed to have a conversation with this couple soon. But what I told Nicole is I'm sure we can have some people buy some of these pots and these plants, but for him to come up and to share, we'll pay their gas, so we'll get them a bite to eat, and we'll give them a stipend for the day, because typically when I'm not preaching, unless it's somebody within our church, that's just typically what we do. And so, my hope, church, is that we bless the socks off of them like we did with the Flemings, and that they are able to purchase a refrigerator for her sister back in India, and maybe put a little bit of food in it too. So anyway, I know our church is very good about things like that. Typically, no pressure. I'm not trying to manipulate, but I've seen our church bless others, and I think this is another opportunity to bless. And since it's Hub Sunday, and I'm not going to be able to do a mission trip this year. This will be the first time in many years that I've not done a mission trip or an international trip, for that matter. And so, I guess this is the way I get to do an international trip, is by having international people come to our church. Been a few years since we've done that. 2017, I think, is when Linus was here. Io's been here a couple of times, but yeah. So that'll be the end of the month. And also, one other announcement. Susan, we're going to get this in the newsletter too. We are not going to have the park service as a community. That was decided late last week, with the park, I should say, with the Fairfax Fair being canceled. It was determined that we would not have the park service as well. So what that means is that any church that meets, and our church will meet, Lord willing, the plans are to meet on August the 16th, or 20, whatever weekend it is. We will meet at our building for Sunday school, as we have been, at 9:15, for worship service at 10:30, as we have been. We will not be breaking to go to the park as we do most years. So last year, if memory serves, last year we didn't meet at the park because of rain. So we met in the school. So I think 2 years ago we were at the park. Last year we were at the school. This year we're in the churches. And that means that of the 5 services that we have every year as a part of the Ministerial Alliance, community services, the first 4 this year will have been canceled. Good Friday, then Resurrection Morning, and then baccalaureate service for graduating seniors, and now the park service. So we still have the Sunday before Thanksgiving, if that happens, but we will see.
I hope so.
Yeah.
It's depressing.
So anyway, again, I'm just talking, waiting for questions. I can talk more.
Deanna's with us too, but she couldn't get on.
Okay. So hi, Deanna. She wasn't able to type in. So again, if there's not a flurry of questions in the next 10 minutes, we're probably going to stop a little bit early. Again, we haven't had any questions in the first 17 minutes, so we'll just see what happens. But I'm happy to stay on and answer questions. If not, we'll probably end a little early and allow anyone, of course, on your side, you can just open up another tab and watch the sheriff's debate, and then flip back over and listen to me if you want to, or mute me, or stop me or whatever, or just shut me down. I'm never going to know. But from my perspective, if if there's no questions, we'll probably end just a little bit early, about 15 minutes early tonight, and I will probably watch that as well. So. Mark 14, 51, 52. Tradition says this is Mark. I'm not looking. I'm doing this off the cuff. This is the young man running away. Yeah.
See, naked. He ran away naked.
Yeah. So in Mark, tradition says that Mark wrote Mark, but Mark wrote Mark from Peter's perspective. And one of the reasons that we think that is true is that every story where the disciples are in limited number, meaning, oftentimes it's the 12, it's the 12, it's the 12. But if there is one disciple or if there's three disciples, those stories that are in here, Peter's in them all. And so many people think that Peter told Mark. And of course, we know that Peter was considered the father, the spiritual father of John Mark. And it was also presumably at John Mark's mother's house where the final meal, where the Passover was taken. And it was in that same upper room where the early church gathered after Christ's ascension, and where the Holy Spirit fell upon the gatherers there in that upper room. And that was John Mark's house, or at least his parents' house. Anyway, so he was a young man. And this is the same John Mark in Acts chapter 13, 14, where Paul and Barnabas had their famous fight over that John Mark had left, and Paul didn't want to take him on the next mission trip because, well, I don't want to take him if he's going to abandon us again. Barnabas said, let's give him another chance. And yet what we see is that in the long term, we don't have any more to that story. In fact, we lose Barnabas largely. We don't even really hear anything more about Barnabas in the Bible. And yet at the end of Paul's ministry in 2 Timothy chapter 4, when he's writing to Timothy, he says, and bring Mark with you. So there had been a reconciliation at some point. And honestly, we can think that had something to do with Paul's affection for Barnabas, with Barnabas's influence of Paul. Remember, it was Barnabas who brought Paul to see the disciples, to meet them in Jerusalem after Paul's conversion. And it was Barnabas who kind of stood by his side and made that happen. And then it was Barnabas who went, when he was up in Antioch and realized he needed help, he went over to Tarsus to find Paul and bring him back in Acts chapter 11. And so, but this influence brought John Mark back into the mix. But this one little biographical statement, potentially autobiographical statement in Mark chapter 14, it has a statement about a young boy running away naked, meaning the guard grabbed for his clothing and got the clothing, and the boy spun out of it, or whatever else happened, and ran away. Well, there is debate. I mean, it's not definitive because it doesn't say that, hey, it was me or I, Mark, did this or whatever. But why is that statement in the Bible? It's such a random statement. It has nothing to do with Jesus. It doesn't say it was a disciple. I mean, John was young, could it have been the Apostle John? Yeah, maybe. But, John was often referred to by name, even in the book of Mark. So a lot of people believe that statement is an autobiographical statement about Mark, saying, and this young boy ran away naked when the guards came and grabbed him. Well, again, we don't have conclusive evidence, but it seems rather likely to me that would be Mark. So again, tradition, yes. Fact,
No, we don't know.
Not for sure. But some things are fun to think about. Any other thoughts or questions? See, I killed 4 minutes on a yes question. It's just who I am. I told you I should get paid by the word. If you haven't checked out my podcast in a while, you can check that out. Christian Educator Weekly. I'm doing a series right now on the law of the teacher. And it's from a book, actually. I'm about to record my next episode. It's from this book right here, Teaching to Change Lives, Dr. Howard Hendricks. Just absolute brilliant man. Died, I want to say, a decade or so ago. And wow, my laptop is about to die. So we're going to cut off shortly here tonight, even if I don't choose to cut off shortly.
Question then. She thumbing through Mark, she came across the term "the abomination that causes desolation." What does that mean? The
abomination that causes desolation, I believe, is in Mark chapter 11 or 12. That comes from Daniel chapter 9. And what that means is that we're gonna look far into the future. Potentially, we don't know how far it could be 3.5 years from now, but it is the what?
Your plug?
No, we're probably going to have to deal with this more next week, just from the matter of time. But
okay.
It's about it's about when the Antichrist does an abomination